Karina Romano had ignored 5 calls from the same unknown number before she finally understood that some warnings aren't optional. The 6th call came as a text at 9:47 p.m. while she was locking her apartment door, already running late for the closing shift at Lucia's, the upscale Italian restaurant where she'd worked for 3 years, saving every tip toward a life that didn't involve other people's dinner orders. Karina, do not leave your building. They're outside. She stared at the screen, pulse jumping, then forced herself to laugh. Probably a wrong number. Maybe a prank. Definitely not worth the panic crawling up her throat. She deleted it, shoved her phone in her pocket, and headed for the stairs. The lobby was empty except for the night security guard, half asleep behind his desk. Outside, the street looked normal. Parked cars, distant traffic, the glow of bodega signs 3 blocks down. Normal, except for the black sedan idling across from the entrance, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. Except for the man in the gray coat leaning against the lamppost at the corner, cigarette burning but never lifted to his lips, eyes tracking every person who passed. Karina's instinct screamed wrong, but her rent was due in 4 days, and missing a shift meant losing money she didn't have. She stepped onto the sidewalk. The sedan's passenger door swung open. A man's voice cut through the night, low and commanding. "Get in. Now." She turned. The man behind the wheel wasn't looking at her. He was watching the corner, where gray coat had straightened, cigarette dropping to the pavement as his hand disappeared inside his jacket. "You have 10 seconds, Karina," the driver said, finally meeting her eyes through the open door. Green eyes. Sharp jaw. Tattoos climbing his neck from beneath a black collar. A face that looked like it had been built for trouble and decision-making in equal measure. "I don't know you," she managed, voice steadier than her hands. "I know. Get in anyway." His gaze cut back to the corner. 5 seconds. Gray coat started walking toward her. Karina made a choice she'd regret and question, and ultimately defend for the rest of her life. She got in the car. Welcome to the Diary of Hearts. If you're new here, hit subscribe. I post dangerously addictive mafia romance stories like this one 3 times a week, and once you start, you won't be able to stop. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing which parts of the world my stories reach. Now, let's get into today's story. The door locks clicked the second she was inside. The sedan pulled away from the curb so smoothly it felt rehearsed, like he'd done this before. Picked up terrified women and driven them away from danger they didn't understand. "Who are you?" Karina demanded, fingers already reaching for the door handle.
"Locked."
"Of course."
"Dario."
He didn't look at her, eyes scanning mirrors, tracking cross streets with the precision of someone who knew exactly how fast a bad situation could get worse. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now." "Then let me out." His laugh was short, humorless. "You want to go back?" Walk up to the man in the gray coat and ask what he wanted. Maybe he was just smoking. He wasn't. "You don't know that." Dario's hands tightened on the wheel. "I know he's been outside your building every night for a week. I know he followed you to work twice. I know his name is Enzo Ferraro, and I know the last woman he followed ended up in the East River." The air left Karina's lungs. "So no," Dario continued, voice flat. "You're not getting out. Not until I figure out what they want and how to make sure they don't get it." She stared at his profile, the hard line of his jaw, the tattoos that disappeared into his collar, the controlled fury in every movement. "What do they want?" she whispered. He finally looked at her, just for a second, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Something that looked almost like regret. "You." The warehouse was industrial and isolated, tucked between the canal and a row of shuttered factories. Dario pulled inside through a rolling door that closed behind them with mechanical finality. Karina's heart hammered as he killed the engine. "Out," he said, already opening his door. She didn't move. "Where are we?" "Somewhere they can't reach you." "That's not an answer either." His gaze cut to her sharp. "You want answers or safety? Because right now you don't get both." She got out. Not because she trusted him, but because staying in a locked car in an empty warehouse felt worse than whatever waited outside it. Dario led her through a maze of crates and equipment to a structure in the center of the space, a room built entirely of glass. Four walls, transparent from floor to ceiling, enclosing maybe 200 square feet.
A bed.
A chair. A small bathroom with frosted glass she could barely see through. Everything else? Completely, devastatingly visible. No, Karina said, stopping short. Absolutely not. It's temporary. It's a cage. It's protection. Dario opened the door. Electronic lock, keypad, the kind of security that cost more than her entire year's rent. You'll have everything you need. Food, water, clean clothes. I'll be right outside. Watching me. Keeping you alive. He stepped aside, gesturing to the open door. Your choice, Karina. Walk in, or walk back out to the street. But if you walk out, I can't help you. She wanted to run. Wanted to scream. Wanted to call the police or her brother or anyone who might believe her. But Greycoat's face was burned into her memory, and Dario's voice when he said East River hadn't sounded like a lie. She walked into the glass room. The door sealed behind her with a soft, final click. The first hour, she paced. The second, she yelled, demands, threats, promises to call every cop in the city the second she got out. Dario sat outside the glass, 20 feet away, working on a laptop like she was background noise. By hour 3, exhaustion won. She sank onto the bed, pulled her knees to her chest, and finally let herself feel the terror she'd been holding back. Why me? She asked, voice raw. Dario looked up. For a long moment, he just watched her through the glass, expression unreadable. Then he stood and walked closer, stopping just outside the wall that separated them. Your father. Karina's stomach dropped. My father's been dead for 2 years. I know. Dario's jaw flexed. But the people he owed money to aren't. And when they couldn't collect from him, they started looking at what he left behind. He didn't leave anything. Just debt. He left you. The words hit like a physical blow. I don't have money, she said desperately. I work at a restaurant. I live in a 5th-floor walk-up. I can barely afford groceries. They don't want money, Karina. Dario's voice dropped, something dark and tired bleeding through. They want leverage. Proof that people who cross them lose what they love most. Her throat tightened. I didn't cross anyone.
No.
But your father did. And now you're paying for it. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Why do you care? Karina finally asked. If I'm just some random girl whose father screwed the wrong people, why risk helping me? Dario's hand came up, palm pressing against the glass. He stared at it like he was seeing something else. Someone else. Because the last time I didn't act fast enough, he said quietly, I spent 6 months trying to find pieces of my sister to bury. Karina's breath caught. She was 19, Dario continued, voice stripped of everything but grief. College student. Barista on weekends. Had nothing to do with my world. But someone wanted to send me a message, and she was convenient. His eyes lifted to Karina's, and she saw it then. The guilt, the rage, the kind of loss that carved people hollow. I was too slow, too careful, too worried about escalating the wrong way. His hand dropped from the glass. So forgive me if I don't give a damn about your privacy right now. I'm not losing someone else because I hesitated. Karina stood slowly, crossed to the glass, and stopped directly in front of him. I'm not your sister. I know. And this, she gestured at the room, isn't protection. It's a prison. It's both. Dario stepped closer until only the glass separated them. And right now, it's the only thing keeping you breathing. For the first time, Karina didn't argue, because the look in his eyes wasn't control or cruelty. It was terror. 2 days passed in strange, suspended tension. Dario brought her meals. Clean clothes that fit too well, like he'd guessed her size just by looking. Books she didn't ask for, but found herself reading anyway. He worked outside the glass, phone calls in Italian and English, meetings with men who looked at her through the walls like she was an object to be catalogued and protected. She watched him, studied the way he moved, the way his voice changed depending on who he was talking to, the way he touched the back of his neck when he was frustrated, the way his shoulders tensed when someone said her name. On the third morning, she made a decision.
Dario.
He looked up from his laptop. Let me out. Just for a few hours. I need to go to work, talk to my boss, prove I'm alive.
No.
I'll lose my job. You'll lose your life. You can't keep me here forever. His expression didn't change. Watch me. She wanted to throw something. Instead, she forced herself to stay calm, to think like the smart, capable woman she'd been before this nightmare started. Supervised, she tried. You send someone with me. I go to the restaurant. Tell them I'm sick. Come right back. Dario stared at her for a long beat, then swore under his breath. 1 hour. 2 guards. You don't leave their sight.
Deal.
She should have known it was a mistake the second she stepped outside. The bus stop was 3 blocks from Lucia's, mid-morning sun cutting through the humidity. Karina stood under the shelter, flanked by 2 of Dario's men, silent, efficient, almost invisible in their watchfulness. She checked the time. 40 minutes left before she had to be back. 40 minutes of something that felt almost like freedom. The man in the gray coat appeared so suddenly, she didn't have time to react. 1 second, the street was empty. The next, he was 10 feet away, walking toward her with a kind of casual confidence that made her skin crawl. Karina Romano, he said, smiling like they were old friends. One of Dario's guards stepped between them. Walk away. Gray coat didn't even glance at him. His eyes stayed locked on Karina. You think glass walls will keep you safe? He asked, voice soft, almost gentle. We know where you are. We know who's protecting you. And when he slips, when he looks away for even a second, we'll be there. The second guard's hand moved inside his jacket. Gray coat raised his hand slowly, still smiling. Not today. Just wanted her to know we're patient. We can wait. A black car pulled up to the curb, Dario behind the wheel, jaw tight, eyes blazing. He didn't get out. Didn't raise his voice. He just looked at Gray coat, and whatever passed between them made the man step back, hands still raised, smile finally fading. Next time, Gray coat said to Karina. Then he walked away. Dario's guards moved her into the car before her legs could give out. The ride back was silent, Dario's hands white-knuckled on the wheel, fury radiating off him in waves. When they reached the warehouse, he didn't wait for her to walk, just scooped her up and carried her back to the glass room, setting her down inside with a gentleness that contradicted the rage in his eyes. I'm sorry, Karina whispered. You have nothing to be sorry for. His voice was rough, barely controlled. I shouldn't have let you leave. You were right. About the danger. About all of it. Dario pressed his forehead against the glass, eyes closed. I can't lose you, Karina. I can't. He stopped, the words too raw to finish. Karina's hand came up, matching his on the opposite side of the glass. I'm here, she said quietly. I'm still here. When he opened his eyes, something had shifted between them. Something neither of them was ready to name yet. On the 4th day, Karina noticed the pattern. Dario had surveillance feeds running on 3 monitors outside the glass, street cameras, building entries, license plate scanners. He cycled through them obsessively, tracking movements, cataloging threats. But there was one feed he kept returning to. A black SUV, same make and model, appearing in 3 different locations over 2 days. Different streets, different times, but always within a mile of the warehouse. Karina stood at the glass, watching him watch the screen. That SUV, she said. You flagged it 4 times today. Dario's head snapped up. You've been counting? I'm good with patterns. She pointed. It's the same vehicle. Different plates, but same dent on the rear bumper. Someone's rotating plates to avoid detection. He stared at her.
What?
Karina asked. How did you? He stopped, pulling up the footage, zooming in. The dent was barely visible, easy to miss unless you were looking. She was right. Dario stood slowly, crossing to the glass.
Who taught you that?
My father. He worked fraud investigation before. She stopped. Before everything fell apart. Before debt, and desperation destroyed him. Dario's expression shifted, something like respect flickering through the anger and grief. "Karina, I need you to look at something." He unlocked the door. For the first time in 4 days, he stepped inside the glass room, closing the door behind him. The space between them felt impossibly small and impossibly charged. He pulled out his phone, showed her a dozen photos, vehicles, street corners, timestamps. "Tell me what you see." She studied them, mind clicking into the analytical mode she'd learned from her father. Patterns emerged, repeated faces, overlapping locations, small details that connected seemingly random events. "It's a rotation," she said finally. 3-person surveillance team, 8-hour shifts, covering a 6-block radius. They're not just watching. They're mapping your patterns, learning when you leave, who you meet, how long you're gone. Dario's jaw tightened. They're planning a move. Soon, Karina agreed. Otherwise, they wouldn't risk this much exposure. For a long moment, they just stood there, inches apart, breathing the same air for the first time since this started. "You're brilliant," Dario said quietly. "I'm observant." "Same thing." His hand lifted, almost touching her face before he caught himself. "Karina, don't." She stepped back, even though every instinct screamed to close the distance. "Don't apologize for keeping me alive. Don't apologize for the glass. Just tell me what happens next." His eyes held hers. "They've requested a meeting. Neutral ground. Tomorrow night. What do they want? To negotiate? Or to confirm I have you?" His voice went hard. "Either way, it's a trap. Then don't go. If I don't, they'll assume I'm weak. And weak men don't keep people safe." Karina's hands curled into fists. "So what? You walk into an ambush to prove you're not afraid. I walk in prepared." Dario's hand finally settled on her shoulder, warm and grounding. "And you stay here?"
No.
His eyes narrowed. "Karina, I'm the reason they're even talking to you. I'm the leverage, the bargaining chip." She lifted her chin. "If decisions about my life are being made, I'm going to be in the room where they happen." "Absolutely not." "Then unlock the door and let me walk out right now. Because I'm done being the girl everyone protects by lying to." Dario stared at her like she'd just detonated a bomb. "You're going to get yourself killed." "Maybe." Her voice didn't waver. "But at least I'll die making my own choices." 4-5 heartbeats, neither moved. Then Dario swore, low and vicious, and stepped back.
"Fine.
"But you stay behind me. You don't speak unless I signal. And if anything goes wrong, anything, you run. Understood?" "Understood." He left the glass room, and this time he didn't lock the door behind him. The meeting was set in an abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of the city. High ceilings, rusted machinery, enough shadows to hide a small army. Karina wore dark clothes Dario had provided, her heart hammering as they walked through the entrance flanked by 6 of his men. The enemy waited in the center of the space. 5 men. Gray coat in front, smile sharp as a knife. "Dario Vitali," he said, spreading his hands. "And you brought the girl. How trusting." "Or how confident," Dario countered, voice cold. "Let's skip the posturing." Graycoat's smile widened. "Your father's debt dies with her, Dario. Simple trade. You get to walk away clean, no more targets on your family, and we get what we're owed." "She's not currency. She's all that's left." Karina's nails dug into her palms. Every instinct screamed to stay silent, stay small. But staying small was what got her into this glass prison in the first place. She stepped forward, past Dario's protective arm. "Enzo Ferraro," she said clearly. "Gray coat." Enzo blinked. "You know my name. How charming. I also know you've been skimming from the accounts you're supposed to be collecting." She kept her voice steady, channeling every ounce of her father's old investigative training. "The debt you claim my father owed? It was paid 8 months before he died. But you pocketed the payment and kept the file open." The room went silent. "Prove it," Enzo said, but his smile had frozen. Karina pulled out her phone, Dario's phone. Actually, loaded with the financial records she'd spent the last 4 days analyzing from inside the glass room. Bank transfer. March 14th, 2 years ago. $47,000 from my father's account to an offshore holding company registered under your name. She turned the screen toward him. You've been running a ghost debt. And if I found it, your bosses will too. Enzo's face went white. One of the men behind him stepped forward. Is this true? She's lying. I have the routing numbers, Karina interrupted. Account statements. Transfer receipts. Everything. Dario's hand settled on her lower back, steadying and proud in equal measure. The tension in the room shifted, violence coiling tight. Enzo's hand moved toward his jacket. Dario's men moved faster. Walk away, Dario said, voice like iron. Or I send this to your bosses and let them handle it. For 10 seconds, no one breathed. Then Enzo stepped back, hands raised, fury and defeat written across his face. This isn't over. Yes, Dario said quietly, it is. Enzo and his men left through the side door, footsteps echoing until they faded into nothing. The second they were gone, Dario spun Karina to face him. That was the most reckless, brilliant, infuriating thing I've ever seen. You're welcome. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. Her hands fisted in his shirt. I'm right here. We're both right here. His control shattered. He kissed her. Not gently, not carefully, but with 4 days of fear and relief, and something much more dangerous compressed into a single, desperate moment. Karina gasped against his mouth, and he pulled her closer, one hand in her hair, the other around her waist, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead pressed against hers. I'm not letting you go, Dario said roughly. Ever. You understand that. Then don't, she whispered. Don't let go. Behind them, his men were already clearing the space, securing the exit. But Karina didn't care about any of it. For the first time in 4 days, she wasn't behind glass. And for the first time in years, she wasn't alone. Back at the warehouse, the glass room door stood open. Dario walked Karina to the threshold, then stopped. Your choice, he said quietly. I can get you out of the city. New identity, clean start, no ties to any of this. Or you stay. With me. In my world. His jaw flexed. But if you stay, we do it together. No more glass walls. No more decisions made for your protection without your input. Karina looked at the transparent room. The place that had been prison and sanctuary, cage and shield. She stepped inside one last time, looked around, then walked back out and stopped beside him. The problem wasn't the glass, she said. It was being on opposite sides of it. Dario's hand found hers. Then we stay on the same side. She laced her fingers through his. Deal. Outside, the city hummed with danger and possibility. Inside, two people who'd started as captor and captive stood side by side, reflected together in the glass that no longer separated them. And when Dario pulled her close, she didn't pull away. She chose him. Just like he'd chosen her the moment he opened that car door. And that's how Karina went from prisoner to partner in 4 days behind glass. Question. Would you trust a man who locked you in a glass room if he kissed you like the world was ending?
Comment below.
If you love this, subscribe. 3 new Mafia romance stories drop weekly, and trust me, the next one is unhinged. Share with your romance-obsessed friends. Thanks for watching. Remember, sometimes the cage isn't the problem. It's who's standing on the other side. See you next time.